Good morning. I've been thinking a lot about my parents these last few weeks. They got a late start in getting married and having children. My sister and I. They were both in their 40s when I was born. My mother was 42. My dad was 47. Um, my dad served in World War II. He was drafted in 1943 and went to Europe. And he didn't have a cushy job. He was the machine gunner on the back of one of the military jeeps in Europe. And my mother at the time, during the war, she worked in a factory. She was one of the Rosie the Riveters. She worked in a wire and steel factory near the house where she grew up as a die maker during the war. And they met, I can't remember. I'm not sure if they ever told me, but they were married in 1948. My dad came home from the war and on the GI Bill, got his degree at night from Northeastern University in Boston while he was working at the same factory that my mother had been working at. So I think that's how they met. Anyways, thinking about today and how we have to stay at home and meat is getting a little bit scarce. Beef isn't in the supply that we'd like it to be right now. But that's all has got me thinking about my parents and the sacrifices they made and the country made during World War II, where factories were turned over to making military equipment. Even pennies weren't made out of copper during those years. And I've got them in somewhere in a folder in a box from my coin collecting as a child. But how the nation came together, and indeed the world came together during World War II for the common good. And especially in this country, when all those factories were retooled and women went to work in factories that they normally didn't work in at the time. They were primarily homemakers. And then fast forwarding that to today and looking at some of the things that are happening with factories retooling and making personal protective equipment for people that need it all across the country and the globe. Similar things are happening, and we're beginning to see some shortages with beef, and who knows what will happen down the road. But again, it's all for the common good. We've seen on the news some protests recently in different states about, open up and let us do what we want to do and go where we want to go. And, how I see that, it's not really for the common good. It's more of a selfish idea than anything else, and partly political, it seems to be. But I read a book a couple years back, and then I gave it away to our daughter. It's by Robert Reich. It's called The Common Good. And he talks about how we've lost that. And this was, of course, pre-pandemic. But we've lost that in our society, that common good that was around during World War II and then afterwards when the baby boom generation happened. And, many of us are a result of that. But over the years and the decades, we've lost that and we've become more self-oriented. And we see that playing out in every aspect of our society. But maybe now it's time to think more about the common good of the nation and indeed the world, because this is a worldwide pandemic, just like World War II encompassed the whole world. So what I was thinking about too was, how do we as Christians in our day look at the common good? We should always be doing that as Christians, because we give. We give of our time and our talent and treasures, but yet we kind of remain selfish in some regards to some degree a lot of the time. And while we think we are doing good, for the common wealth and common health of humanity, we tend to be more selfish than we do oriented towards the overall common good of humanity. I've used it before. It's one of those sayings about joy. And when the first time I used it in Sunday morning, one person knew what it was, what it stood for as an acronym: JOY, Joy, Jesus, others, and yourself. And sadly, it seems our society, and in part us as well, we turn that around as us, yourself, others, and then Jesus. Or maybe it's yourself, Jesus, and others, and maybe it goes back and forth depending on the day. But as we are away from worship for a while, until it is safe to return. And by the way, our council met in Monday in the Family Life Center. We kept safe distance from one another and all wore masks, and we decided to take a wait and see approach to when we will come back to worship together. And probably not anytime soon, certainly not this month, maybe even next month, but we'll see. And when that happens, we'll probably put some protocols and procedures in place to make it safe for everybody. But anyways, I was thinking about how we as Christians during this time think about the common health and the common good in our society, and how we need to respond and how we should respond as individuals and as a church in this community that not only serves this community but serves worldwide with offerings through our denomination and supporting the mission in Costa Rica and a whole host of other things that we can and we probably should do. So I'd like you to reflect a little bit about joy, Jesus, others, and yourself these days, and how we as individuals and how we as a church can do more for the common good and for the common health of the people around us and across the globe. So God bless and have a wonderful day. We'll talk soon.